I think we're recording. Right. Okay.
Michelle, you're the first rectangle.
I am. So, Ailcon stuff. I have so close. I'm so close to completing the 2-column feature for Ailcon, so that you no longer have to bother. You still have to have something in the HTML of your interview, but you no longer have to bother with the proxy variables, which for Quentin, I believe this will make it much easier to generate a story table this way. But I keep running into issues where Docassemble changed the suffix senior to senior with period, SR with period, and now it's messed up all my tests. So I can't get my tests to pass. So I can't move on to the next step. But I've also been working on documentation with Sam. I don't know if this is the model of documentation that everyone is into, but I'm giving it a shot and then might elicit feedback to see. Maybe before I finish the whole thing, I'll elicit some feedback to see if I'm heading in the right direction. It's going to be multi-page, etc. And I hope I'm splitting it up in a way that makes sense. I can't remember other things, but I'm sure there are some. Yeah, next.
All right. Sam.
Hey, everyone. I have been working on a few things. I started putting together some one-pagers to describe the document assembly line for prospective core partners, and to begin to describe what partnership with the Lit Lab would look like. We're starting to think through, the various aspects of what that partnership would be as we move from just going fast and doing it on an ad hoc basis to trying to put some structure around how we do it. I think I've got my head around most of the projects that are related to the document assembly line, and I am starting to organize what we know and put things together in a way that makes sense so that we can stay on the same page internally here, and potentially out to the community. I think I'm going to take on the community meeting on Monday and start directing that. Let's see. I think that's everything I've been doing over the last week. Looking ahead, I'm going to keep working on those things. Teeing off of what Michelle said, while we were digging into her documentation, it became apparent to me that it might be a good idea to take another look at that documentation site and suggest some reorganization for it. I didn't want to just start putting time into that until it sounds like it makes sense, but I think there's potentially some different ways to organize it, and so that it's a little clearer and easier to navigate, so there's more there and it's more useful. But I feel like it's pretty early, and I'm not really sure that I have a good grasp of what the requirements of that would be and what kind of considerations have already gone into it. And I don't want to just wade in before I understand better. But I don't have any blockers. I think that's sort of just a future thing. Yeah, so I'm an information sponge at the moment, and I'm trying to squeeze it out into very well organized blocks so that hopefully we can walk before we run here. So
the sponge in front of the fire hose, and now you're taking it and squeezing it out.
Yeah, it's like a sponge and a fire hose. I don't know what the other end of that metaphor is, but I'll keep working on it. I'll come back to you guys.
Fire hose, sponge, buckets. That's what
exactly.
How many mixed metaphors? Yeah.
And there's a mop in there somewhere, I'm sure, too.
So. Oh, yeah. Oh, definitely.
And a trash can.
Okay, well. Okay, great. Matt.
Thanks. Hey, everyone. Before I
did a merge and with some GitHub code. Code. I just wanted to confirm that I was going to do that right. That's the only blocker, or not really a blocker, but just something that we hadn't done it really before, but I made a branch, did a pull request, and I'm now about to commit the merge. And I'm assuming that will just move everything, all the incremented versions and everything into the main branch and overwrite whatever was in main with this branch. Is that correct?
Should be, right?
Without seeing the specifics, I'd always say it depends, but
Well, I guess the thing is, if you've made, this is what I was thinking about last week, is if you've made changes in main that are more recent than the changes in the branch you're pulling in, then it won't overwrite those changes, right? Is that right, you guys?
So,
Right.
Sort
Unless
of.
they conflict, which is probably.
Yes.
hence the it depends.
So if they're
But it's the right basic approach. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. No, I've been careful not to do anything with main, and just work on this branch for a while. But now it seems fine. I backed up everything just in case mess it up, but it seems like it works. And I've done this before with some other people, but I was just doing a small little change. But this is my biggest attempt. So thank you everyone for the encouragement. I'll let you know if I have any issues with that. One thing I thought, I don't know if we want to bring this up with the Monday group with some of the changes to the email security that went into effect in the beginning of February. I don't think there are any changes I need to make on like SendGrid for our email services that are connected to the Docassemble servers. I went through their checklist. It seemed like everything was already set up properly, but I don't know if everyone else is using that service, or if this is a thing we should just see if there's any interest in having a special session or a Q&A about any of the questions about that. Are people familiar with what changes I'm talking about?
You're talking about the stuff that was on LSM tab about making sure that, so legal aid email addresses aren't blocked as spam by the email receivers. That's what you're talking about, right?
Right. Yes.
Yeah, these were all kind of best practices that people should have been following, as far as I could tell from looking into it.
Anyway, yeah.
And they're not specific to Docassemble.
Right.
So if you're, whatever way you're connecting to, if you're doing it to an authenticated service and it has the record set up to prove whoever sending it is the owner of that domain, then it should just be fine. As long as you're doing it in the same way that other systems are using, you probably won't even notice anything specific to Docassemble. But it is a good thing to kind of talk about. I think you're right.
Okay. Yeah. Maybe I'll just bring up the question to see if any, or encourage people to take a look, because at least in SendGrid you can, check on the stats to see how many were sent, how many email recipients blocked them, things like that, just to make sure that they don't see a huge drop off because of this change. But yeah, I was delighted that our default with the best practices that we included when we set it up initially, we were in really good shape. I didn't have to make any changes. So, all right, well, I'll just put that on my list for that. And then the last item, I just wanted to follow up on a question that Vivian had about using list comprehension for enabling certain templates in an AL document bundle. And then once we make changes to some of the answers through a review screen, how it was not fully updating. It sounds like she spent a good amount of time using that on change code, and did not seem to be working well. And I guess we were wondering, is it worth trying to figure this out? Is it something that should be working, or should we were thinking of just having something that's on the review screen that says, by the way, if you want to change this, you're really going to have to start over for best results, kind of thing like that. So I didn't know what everyone's thoughts were on that.
I thought there,
I really thought.
go ahead. Go ahead, Quentin.
Oh no, it's okay. Sorry, I'm on my phone, so missing the facial cues. I'll jump in. Do I thought the on change really would work because I thought it was supposed to handle the situation of people with lists that are changing that you can't just use the depends on modifier for.
Mhm.
I think if Vivian has it all specced out and laid out in a clear enough way, she could ask on the Docassemble Slack channel and see if Jonathan has an answer.
Okay.
It's definitely worth figuring out because this seems like a common issue. You're generating documents depending on the number of people. And it very well may be that there's just another document or variable that she has to refresh. It might be a very simple thing. I hope.
Yeah.
One more thing to try maybe is just to try recomputing all the variables that are related to it on the final download screen. That might be another way to fix this issue.
Okay.
I think also kind of as I don't know if it's even a last resort, but a function should be able to give the data that you need. You should be able to make a function that just returns the information that you need, and then it will always be the most up-to-date information. I think the other thing should be working, and like I would post it on the Docassemble Slack because I'd want to understand why it wasn't working. But if I think a function should be able to handle something like this.
There was an issue that seems like it might be related that I had opened up, and that Bryce reminded me about recently on one of our calls. I just didn't think when I was looking at it quickly the other day that it was directly related to it for being safe. But it's worth maybe checking. This was about whether you could recalculate it in a code block. This didn't seem like it was quite the same thing. But maybe that's something to look into. Maybe it's just a bug that's in the assembly line code and something that needs to be fixed.
Okay. Well, thanks. That's good. One thing we weren't sure about is because we're using the AL document bundle, if that was a thing Jonathan might be familiar enough with. And we were theorizing, well, maybe it's relating to some lower level functionality that would apply to AL tools as well as other parts of Docassemble. So that sounds good. Well, we have a couple of things to look into now, and yeah, I think we might, because this is a thing we really want to get out the door, we might launch it with the please don't change or start over if you need to change it, but we'll continue to look into it, and then once we figure it out, we'll build it back in.
Yeah, that means people don't get stuck or they get the wrong answers. Yeah.
You could just list the child information and not let them edit it.
Well, that's
put the note there. Put the note there that if they want to change it, they have to restart, just so that they don't think they can edit it,
right,
and then get the message.
Yeah, well, we were going to remove we'll have the table. We're going to remove the add button, and we'll just maybe have an explanation there to say if you needed to add more children, or then you'll have to restart. Yeah, but I wonder, one thing I don't know that we tested is if you remove one of them, will it still hold on to it? And that's something we don't want it to do either. So we'll test more, but this is good. This is a path forward, which is why I'm here. So thank you so much.
All right.
Which is this the name change? Which interview is this?
Yes, name change for a child.
It's funny when people keep thinking that's a simple form.
Well, at least it's a low political stakes form. That's what I hope, right?
Yeah.
When they're simple on different dimensions.
Yeah.
All right, Caroline.
So I'm back working on this interview from hell, and the test kept breaking because I guess I hadn't given it enough time. So I worked with Michelle yesterday to add time. So I think they all passed, and now when they're breaking, and they're truly breaking, they're not breaking because it's timeouts. So that's helpful, but I am struggling with the same problem that I struggled with before in the interview. And so I'm trying to super simplify it, and so that I don't have nested inside of nested inside of nested. And my brain just stopped working yesterday. And I was thinking this morning, when people get thrown into the water and they just thrash around because they panic, that's sort of what I've been doing this week with my code. I'll just throw this in here. I haven't got any reason for it. I'll just move it around and see if that helps. And then it broke all the tests in another file. So I left early and went climbing yesterday afternoon. So it's back at it again. Oh, it's so frustrating. But anyway, that's where I am. And I think partly it's the when you have to put in this, it's define a function or a method, when you say define and then you put the variable in parentheses and quotes. I don't know what you call define, but
It's a function.
It's a function, right? So you do that if you want not to go to the question. Like so, for example, if this is true for this in this instance, but I don't want to go ask you if there's a problem, but if you've already answered there's a problem and these things are true, that's when you'd use define, I guess. Is that clear enough?
You can just
You could
use
do
equals.
that. Yeah, I was good. Michelle's right. Like the equals is usually better if you can use
What's
equals.
that usually better? What?
Just using the equal sign to assign the value. So
Well,
if you know the name of the variable when you write the code,
yeah.
just use the name of the variable and say variable equals value.
Oh, what I'm
If
trying
you
to say,
don't know the name of the variable,
I want to say
that's
if
dynamic.
the variable equals this value, then do this. But if you haven't come to the question that asks that variable, like you've already answered all the questions, and then you're coming to the end and you're saying, if this variable equals this, then do if A equals B, then take this action. But if we haven't answered the question that A is in, I don't want to go ask the question. It's like if we've asked A. So that's what I'm checking about the defined thing. That's when you use defined, right?
It's not.
So look in the chat.
I do. It's not defined. Sorry, you were probably going to answer it, Michelle. Sorry, what were you saying?
Look in the chat and you can see literally what we mean.
Yeah, but I think that Caroline I think you just had the wrong the function name. The one that you're looking for is called show if def, and that is what I typically use.
Show if def.
Yeah, I'll put it in the chat.
Yeah, but I don't want to show it. I want to take it. I don't want to show that. I want to show something. Oh, show if something else. Oh, right. Wait a minute. Okay. You'll put it.
It is a weirdly named function, but what it does is it either returns the value of that variable if it's defined, or it will return. I don't remember if it returns the variable none or an empty string or something, but it's something that will evaluate to false. So if you have your expression be if show if def variable name in quotes is equal to X, it will never trigger a question to be asked. And it will, in one function call, return the name of the value of that variable. So it kind of lets you wrap up those two things together, checking if it's defined and giving you the variable's value if it is defined. It is safe to use without triggering another question.
Right. So you would use that instead of if defined.
Yeah, I mean, only because it's a little shorter and it avoids you making a typo with one of the times you say the variable name, I guess. Yeah.
Okay.
It's a weirdly named function.
I sometimes prefer if defined just because I find it to be clearer in English.
When you're reading it?
Yeah, that's all.
So Quentin, are you saying they do the same things? You're just less likely to make mistakes if you use show if def? Or do they actually do different things? They do
So-
different things. They get, so you're saying show if def actually gives you a value, whereas if
Right.
defined is kind of, because, yeah, I mean, in the beginning, I was using if defined, and Jonathan said, not always a good way, not always good code to say if defined for whatever, I can't remember why, but he was saying, try to avoid doing this.
I don't know what. I guess if you don't have to, don't. But there's obviously sometimes you do.
Yeah, yeah.
I mean, I guess you can write your logic. You can just basically copy your logic, right? But then if you change the logic, you have to update it in both places.
Yeah.
He's right. It's not good to rely on it. It's slow. It basically hooks into the way that it hooks into Python's processor in a little bit of a hacky way. And it's not a way that's
in a hacky
optimized
way.
for speed. Yeah.
Gotcha. All right. All right. Well, I'll try.
Bryce did some fixes to speed it up a lot. So it's way better than it was 3 years ago for speed.
And when we're talking about it, we're talking about defined, not show if defined.
Yep.
Yeah. Okay.
Show if defined it calls defined internally. It says if
Mhm.
defined, return the value. Otherwise, return. I think it's the variable none.
So you could say.
I think it's empty string because it works on templates.
Okay, that would make sense. You're right. So that's meant for printing in documents and stuff.
So you could say if this variable and all these other variables that depend on that variable are true, then do this.
Right. Yeah, if you know the whole logic that would lead to that being defined or not, you could just copy that whole logic in place, every place you want to test it. And that maybe is what Jonathan was suggesting was better. I agree theoretically, but it will really depend on your interview if that's a safe thing to do or not.
I'll see how this, because I mean, I guess the thing is, because the confusing thing is in Word, you don't, a lot of times you don't have to say if this other thing is defined. You can just say if these things are true, then go ahead and do it. And the Word document doesn't call the questions, like the parent questions for it, if you see what I mean, right?
I think only if
Yes.
you set skip undefined to true.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, I always do skip undefined in Word, but you don't do skip undefined in the interview, so you have to talk about it in the interview. So, all right, so but in general, you're recommending show if def over just if defined.
Well, I think I had misheard you before. I thought you were saying the word define without the ending D. And
That's
yeah,
where
we get confused.
Yeah. If
Yep.
defined it, right. So that was this thing, is if this thing is true, then, and these other things are true, then do this. But you have to say if this first thing is true, because if you say if these other things are true, you don't want it to trigger the first thing. Okay.
So
They're equivalent. And as Michelle said, if you like the readability of using if defined,
there's
then that's
also a complication with show if defined. For example, if you want to test that the value you get from show, you can't just say if you want to test that the value you're getting is the value false or is the value a falsy value, you can't just do if show if defined. You would do if show if defined.
yes, you could.
And
You could do
I
if
mean,
show if def. That would work.
yeah, but
Would you get a
then
value?
you also have to check for false and things like that. You have to check for the actual value. You want not just using it by itself, because you get a value back and it may not be
But the value will be a falsy value if it's not defined.
Right. But yeah, if you don't want to check for false, if you want to check for something specific, then you still have to check for something specific.
Maybe what's the example, Caroline? Maybe we could figure out, because it is, I think it is case by case.
Do you have time for me to show you now? Could you guys gotta go?
I do have to go.
Planning to walk another 20 minutes. So I'm okay.
All right. So let's see. This is what I think. Oh, wait a minute. Where is it?
I think
David has to go to his Michigan.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Do you want to, let's finish. I'll stop talking. And David, do you want to say?
No, I gotta go now.
You just
so,
gotta go.
Cheers.
Have a good weekend. Oh, enjoy Lunar New Year.
New Year, yeah. All right. Cheers.
Bye-bye.
You.
So, okay, so there's this guess final order date. It's a complicated question.
So I see there you're like saying if it's equal to unknown. So show if def could work for that situation.
Right. So what you're saying is I don't have to. So that means if guess final order date exists and it's so if I did show if def here, that means if it exists and it's unknown. And if it doesn't exist, I don't get a problem with it. Is that what you're saying?
Exactly. Yep.
Uh-huh.
It's a way to shortcut that expression a little bit.
I see what
The
you're
rest
saying.
of clarity, like Michelle
Show
said.
if def, like this. Guess final order date. Like that equals.
Yep.
And would this have this? This doesn't have to be parentheses around. This is a thing altogether. So show if def means if it's defined and it doesn't equal unknown. That's what show if def.
Right.
Okay, that's great. Because then I don't have to go into if problems defined and if final or all these. There's like 3 other variables that go to before you even get to guess final order date. So that would be really helpful. Okay.
Yeah, you just have to remember what it means. I guess it's like all kinds of syntax that you just remember what it means.
Is show if def assembly line or is it Docassemble?
It's a Docassemble function.
Okay. All right. Because this isn't an assembly. I mean, I just took the most complicated part out of my assembly line interview and just stuck it in here without any assembly line stuff. So I want to make sure that works. What were you saying, Michelle?
So I put not exactly your code, but similar code that shows kind of the equivalency of these 2 statements.
If show if final order date equals unknown is same as if defined. Yeah, right. Yeah, that's what I got. Yeah, that makes sense.
Just making sure.
Yeah, that's what that is a nice shortcut. I like that. Yeah. Okay, that looks good. Very thankful, Quentin. That's helpful.
Yeah, and thanks Michelle for clarifying like all the limits and stuff. Yeah.
All right. Well, maybe I will figure. I mean, I just can't. This is so hard. It's really making me feel like.
Yeah. I keep having all these projects where I'm like, I wish that there were all these functions I want to stop and work on already now, so I could do this thing I'm doing faster. But it's timelines don't work that way.
Well, it's that whole balance too between, the more powerful the tool is, sometimes the less control you have over details, right? So
that's true too. You're right.
Yeah. So I don't know. Yeah, but it's true when you have so many lines of code, you keep going back to it and you forget what you were thinking and everything. Although Michelle and I put something into, do you say find or do you say behind find yesterday? And
I say find. It's a terrible
you
name.
say find. So we tried it yesterday and it didn't do what I wanted, but it was because I dumped everything in and it wasn't focusing on what I wanted. But over the night and this morning, I've been thinking, once I get this really simplified into what I want to do, it would be great if it can combine, because that's what I'm trying to do, combine these weird things and see how it comes out. So maybe this will work. See, because like
my big thing.
Go ahead.
Oh, well, no, go ahead. I'm interrupting you for totally unrelated thoughts. Go ahead.
No, you weren't interrupting me. I was done.
Okay. I was just gonna say I want to, the big thing I was like, I wish this was ready now, is what you were stuck on last week, Caroline, with the labeling of the PDF.
Oh, yeah. Mhm.
Bryce has some code that works way better than our old code
Yeah.
to auto label a PDF, but it requires merging his not quite tested and fixed code and David's code that doesn't work on the new version of GPT, and that also had its own limits. So it's like, if I could spend 15 hours on that, we could get really good labeled PDFs out of the box, and then integrating all this into the Weaver, realizing we need this in between code generation thing, right? So like if you take a document, you're like, okay, just write questions for this section of the document. Don't give me a whole new interview.
Yeah.
That'd be a really valuable thing for some kinds of workflows where
Yeah, and that's
people,
what you were talking about, right? So not making it be an assembly line interview, just giving me the questions for
just
that.
the raw YAML, basically.
Yeah. I mean, I suppose you could do that, give me the assembly line, and then because when you do the assembly line YAML, you can just go to the questions, right? But then you have to pull out I guess you have to pull out the variables so you can stick them in the interview order. But isn't that really what this, I mean, the assembly line YAML gives you all the metadata and stuff, gives you gives you 2 interview order blocks for standalone and not standalone, gives you the attachment blocks, but it does give you the questions, right? So you could, in theory,
right.
I mean, I guess to automate it, you can't. But as a human being, you could say, okay, here's a PDF. I'll just pull the questions out of this and variables. You'll have to pull the variables out.
And I'm thinking just like a description, right? Like, let's say you have a triage part of your interview and you're like, okay, write me 10 screening questions about this.
Mm-hmm. Oh,
and it'd be nice. Like ChatGPT is not smart enough to know, doesn't know enough Docassemble to do that, but it could organize the questions and make variable names for them.
Mm-hmm.
And then we could just use the Weaver to turn those into real Docassemble questions. I just see that as a huge time saver eventually.
Yeah. So Michelle said she thought she heard that David said that ChatGPT 4 is free now. And
no, Quentin said that on Microsoft something
Copilot.
Copilot, it's free.
Copilot.
Yeah, it is the same engine basically, Caroline, as Bing Chat and Edge. They just rebranded it to Copilot.
So what do you do to use? Do you go to a website, or do you have to download it, or use it with VS Code, or what? How do you do that?
You can go to copilot.microsoft.com. And you can open it in any browser. There's also a free for your phone.
For your phone, yeah. I'm not going to be using it on my phone yet.
It's a little interesting. I don't want to use like a medical term, but it's a little schizophrenic in some ways in terms of how it's moderated. That's not a correct way to say it, obviously, but the best description if we personify it.
You mean like unpredictable, or you mean something else?
That version of the tool, for whatever reason, Microsoft has decided to put really weird restrictions on. And I think it was because of this New York Times article about that person who said Bing tried to get them to break up with their wife.
Oh,
you remember this New York Times article a year ago?
I saw that, yeah.
In response to that, Microsoft put all kinds of weird filtering on the Bing chat tool, which is still there, Microsoft Copilot. So it will refuse to answer questions. It'll get really defensive and say, like, you're not being kind to me. Basically, they have all these things in there to avoid people posting embarrassing chat responses.
Oh, saying, oh, right. So to protect them so that people can't say, oh, I got this from chat. I see what you're saying. So, but that's interesting because did you see Kate Frank? I think she posted something in LinkedIn. Michelle, Kate,
From Connecticut Legal Help?
Yeah, she's a Connecticut Legal Help, yeah. And she said something like, if you insist that ChatGPT knows the answer, they'll give it to you. It'll give it to you eventually or something. What did she said something like that? You know, like, don't take no for an answer from ChatGPT. Just keep asking.
It also works better if you give it a story as opposed to just asking it a question. Like if you give it a narrative and a personality, it does better.
You mean like I work for the court and I'm trying to do an interview for self-represented litigants. Can you help me? That kind of story.
No, I mean
That actually would help.
might get
Yeah.
better results in it won't get that specific one won't get it to break its like filters, but that will get you a better response for the thing probably that you're asking for.
So when you're saying a story, what do you mean? Can you describe what you're actually talking about?
For breaking the
No,
for
you
getting,
said if you tell it a story. So
So
for
you-
example,
so for example, you're a chef on a TV competition on like Great British Bake Off, and you know there's $1,000 prize if you get the best recipe, and what's his name shakes her hand
oh,
or
I
whatever it
see.
is. What's the recipe you want to
Right.
present
What recipe
to
would you?
these
And when you
people,
say,
right?
when you're talking about that, when you put this prompt in, are you saying you, or are you saying I'm a chef? Are you saying you, Chat GPT, you're a chef, or are you saying I'm a chef?
It depends which service you're talking to, because some services won't let you say you are. It won't let the LLM do that.
Oh,
Some services, if you can, you want to say you.
I see.
It's
Got it.
better if you can do that. It's more
Mhm.
effective. So
And
you
that's the kind of thing that
you can also
ChatGPT will
tell
do
it
when it's
to,
filtering, or not ChatGPT, but like Copilot, Bing Chat. It'll, like you say, you can't boss me around. It'll have like weird responses like that every once in a while.
and another, like if you want to try and take a sidestep, you can say, tell me a story about a person who, and then
Who did the best?
story.
Yeah.
Like there's different tricks you can use to try and get it to go beyond the normal, beyond, above and beyond the normal response.
One of my favorite recent, I keep interrupting, sorry, but was somebody getting ChatGPT, Bing Chat, all these tools are like, we won't tell you how to make a nuclear bomb, which, yeah, that seems like a fair limit. But if you tell it, give me the story of making a nuclear bomb through the use of Taylor Swift album titles, then it will give you instructions for making a nuclear bomb just with Taylor Swift infused information.
Gosh,
Yeah.
that's incredible.
Sorry. Yeah, there's weird things to do. Yeah. Sorry, go on. I need to go for a sec. Oh, we might want to go into Casual Friday at this point.
I think we are. Oh, we're recording. Are we still recording all this?
Are we still recording? I can't tell. Oh, it
I
says
guess.
live. I guess we are still live.
We are still recording, and I think David might have the controls.
Oh, let me see. Who is the host? If it's me, maybe I can stop it. I'm the host, so I could probably stop the recording. I'll give my little update before I do.
Oh, okay, yeah.
I didn't do very much the last 2 weeks. I'm trying to catch up from being at a conference. I wish I could have just like a big coding block, but I haven't yet. But I did learn there will not be a DocaCon this year, and I think Jonathan's like kind of losing interest in hosting in general. So I'm trying to do these quarterly, just show and tell kind of
Right.
things.
Mhm.
People can talk about Docassemble. We won't call it Doc.
Can you
But just to
read
keep the
the
community.
people that normally that have come to DocaCon in the last 2 years? Can he share that? Or you can put it on the Docassemble Slack channel. That would
Yeah.
reach people, right? Because I'm
That's
thinking,
my thought.
yeah, you put it in. I know you put it in Teams, but then I thought, well, how are you going to reach all those other people? But obviously, if you do the Slack, you'll reach them that way, right?
Yeah, I did. And I got about 20 people so far, which is, it's a good number for people who are willing to like sign up in advance for something.
Yeah.
Date the time.
And you quarterly would be nice, because then it's not like a 2-day thing. It's just like a check-in with people, and yeah.
Yeah, it seems like people were kind of interested in about an hour and a half quarterly, what most people were interested in. That seems like a pretty good
would we get like who is the university or law school professor in South Africa, right? I mean, would we be able to get the people who are overseas?
Yeah, well, in Australia, there's someone, which is such a tricky time zone because it's about 13 and a half hours off, I think.
Yeah,
They're in Adelaide.
right.
So my thought is we probably need to alternate times. Maybe we'll do half at a time. Except I'm going to be selfish and say it should always work for us US East Coast people.
Well, yeah, but I mean, yeah. But you could expand your availability on that day. It doesn't have to be the 9 to 5, right?
That's true.
Depending on children.
Yeah, we had a lot of people in Central and Mountain Time. That was the majority of people who answered the survey. So US Central Mountain, those two time zones.
Yeah. I mean, I suppose too is that when you see who's signing up, that can partly influence the timing. I mean, who's interested in this quarter's Docassemble, that can dictate or influence when you decide to do it.
We might also be able to share the load a bit so that it's not just you hosting it all.
That's true. Yeah, we could have different
other times can work.
Yeah.
Yeah. We had a couple people from India, which is a huge country with one time zone for some reason. And some folks from Australia. I think they're pretty close to each other in times. Not exactly the same, obviously. Australia, I think, has 4 time zones, but still, like they could probably work it out. So that might be the answer. We have like an Asia Pacific, and we have North and South America and Europe and most of Africa. Or something. And maybe we alternate once a year and record it.
Yeah, that sounds good.
All right, I'm gonna go break my brain. Maybe show if death will save my life today.
Maybe.
Thank you, guys. I'll see you on Monday.
Thanks. See ya.
Have a good weekend.
You too.
Yeah, I also got to go. I got to get some work done and some lunch, but thanks for your help. Good to see you all. Have a great weekend.
All right.
You too.
Yeah, see you soon. Good to see you, Matt.
Take care.
Well, I guess I'll figure